Imagine you're a new Christian in ancient Corinth. You've just renounced the old gods, but there's a problem. Lion, the only meat you can afford to eat was slaughtered in the name of Zeus. Your wealthier church member says it's fine, it's just food. But you're terrified a demon might enter your body through that meal. Who's right? And this argument almost tore the early church apart. To understand this fight, you need to understand one thing first. In the ancient world, meat and religion were the same thing. Ordinary people in the Greco-Roman world rarely ate meat. The primary way to get it was at a sacrificial festival funded by wealthy patrons or the city itself. Here's how it worked. An animal was brought to the altar, its blood was poured out as an offering. A portion of the meat was burned on the altar for the god. The remaining meat was distributed to the people attending the festival. And they took it home, cooked it, and ate it with family and friends. Every bite was understood as dining with the god. But it gets worse. Priests regularly sold surplus sacrificial meat to butchers. So even buying meat at the market didn't guarantee it was free from pagan association. That meat on the butcher's table, it probably came from a temple. There were three pathways meat could reach your plate: through a festival, through the market, both tainted by sacrifice, or through a private estate where you raised and slaughtered your own animals. That third path, only the wealthy could afford it. They were the only ones with guaranteed clean meat. For Jews and early Christians, eating sacrificial meat wasn't just a cultural problem, it was spiritual danger. Pagan idols weren't considered inert statues. People experienced real phenomena at temples. At the shrine of Asclepius, the Greek god of healing, people reported genuine healings. These weren't dismissed as fake. The question was, what caused them? Pagans said Asclepius was a real god who healed. Jews and Christians had a different explanation. Demons stood behind the idols, providing counterfeit power to deceive people into worship. This is a specific technical term in Paul's letters, food offered to idols, and it carried enormous weight. If a demon operated behind the idol and you ate meat sacrificed to the idol, the fear was direct. The demon could enter your body through the food. And this wasn't superstition. It was a coherent theological framework built on observable experience. So now you see the problem. But here's what makes it explosive. The people on each side of this debate weren't random. They split along class lines. Paul uses two labels, the strong and the weak. These aren't moral judgments. They describe confidence regarding idol meat. The strong were likely wealthier, more educated members with exposure to Greco-Roman philosophy. Philosophical training taught that gods don't operate through food. Idols are nothing. They could quote scripture with intellectual confidence. An idol is nothing in the world. The weak were likely poorer, less educated members who had recently left paganism. They had visceral experiential fear of demonic contamination, and they had seen things at temples they couldn't explain away. Look at how these two groups differ across every category: social status, education, philosophical background, access to clean meat, emotional posture toward the issue. The strong had confidence, the weak had terror, and both positions made perfect sense given their lived experience. This wasn't just a theological debate, it was a power struggle. And the deck was stacked. The educated members had the theological vocabulary to win the argument. They could cite philosophy. They could frame the weaker members as ignorant or superstitious. They also had the economic resources to avoid the problem entirely, private meat from their own estates. The poorer members couldn't escape the dilemma. Every piece of meat they could access was potentially contaminated. Three layers of advantage compounded in favor of the strong. At the base, economic advantage, access to privately slaughtered clean meat. On top of that, educational advantage, a philosophical framework to dismiss demonic fears as primitive, And crowning it all, social and rhetorical advantage, the status and vocabulary to dominate the church debate. The strong weren't just saying the weak were wrong. They were saying get over it, from a position where they never had to face the problem in the first place. So what does Paul do? He doesn't pick a side, at least not the way you'd expect. His move is far more radical. Paul acknowledges that idols are indeed nothing. Intellectually, he sides with the strong, but then he pivots. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. He introduces a decision framework. Is an idol a real god? No. Does that mean you should eat freely? Not necessarily. Could your freedom harm someone's conscience? Conscience here means acting against one's own deep convictions, not just a vague, guilty feeling. If your eating causes a brother or sister to violate their own conscience and suffer spiritual harm, then voluntarily abstain. The one with more power bears more responsibility. Paul places the entire burden of behavioral change on the privileged party. The principle extends far beyond meat. In any community, those with more knowledge, status, or freedom bear a greater obligation to consider how their actions affect the vulnerable. Paul didn't ask who had the better theology. He asked who had more power and told them to use it sacrificially. The ancient meat debate wasn't really about meat. It was about whether the privileged would use their freedom to serve themselves or to protect the people who couldn't afford the luxury of not caring.